Good morning. Welcome to AP Computer Science A. Today we are going to go over section 6.2, algorithms. So make sure to have your notes ready with you. Make sure that you have your repo opened up, type in your name, period, and don't forget to click submit once you are done so you can get credit for this assignment. So we're going to work with algorithms, but algorithms with arrays. Now on the last section, we cover how to declare and initialize an array. So to declare and initialize an array, first we need to tell Java what type of elements we are going to be storing in the array. In this case, let's start by storing integers. So we type in int, then the bracket is going to tell Java that that's going to be an array of integers. We need to be able to give a variable name that's going to say nums. And there are two ways to be able to initialize it. Now remember that you can also declare first and then initialize it afterwards. But for today, we are going to do both of them at the same time. And the first way that we cover it is to be able to assign numbers to each index. So let's go and say assign 23, 15, 17, 0, and 14. We know, therefore, the elements in this array are the index is 0, then we have 1, the index of 2, 3, and 4. So we have, how many elements do we have in here? We have 5 elements. We have 5 integers that are assigned to each location or each index of the array. So even though we have only 5 elements, we know that it goes from 0 all the way up to 4. We also learned to be able to print or access each of the elements in the array. So we can go system.out.println. And to be able to access, we have to type in the name of the array and then the index that we want to be able to access. So therefore, if I want to be able to access the second number, we know that the second number is going to have an index of 1. And we can print it out. And therefore, that'll give us a 15, which is the second number, which has an index of 1. Now, one other thing that we can do is we can actually ask Java, what is the size of the array? How many elements are in the array? The same way that we have that length in a string that we used before, we can actually say system.out.println and say length of array. And we're going to access now method by a variable in the Java class. So first, because we created an element, we are going to get the handle nums. It's going to be length. But what do you notice the difference from a string to an array? When we're accessing and wanting to get the length of a string, we use parentheses here. That is because there is a method called length in the string class that returns the length of the string, how many characters are in the string. In an array, there's not a method, there's a field. There's a variable called length that is assigned the length or how many elements are in the array when you declare it and initialize it. When you initialize it, you'll say there are 5 elements. Now, this variable, because we are able to access it, we know that's going to be a public variable. But the difference is that it's going to be final, so the word final will be there. That means that we cannot change it. And that is the reason why when we create an array, we cannot later on change the size of the array. So therefore, if I print nums.length without the parentheses, it's going to give me the length is 5. So therefore, if I add another element in the array, which the index is now 5, we have 6 elements, and it should say the length of the array is now 6. and so on. We can continue adding, and nums.length without the parentheses, because length is a variable, it's a final variable in the array class, is going to give us the length of the array. So on line 22, we know how to be able to print each element individually. Now let's go and print the array. So if I go and print out system.out.println, and I just print nums, if I press run, that should print 23, 15, 17, 0, 14, and 88. Do you agree? But it doesn't. What is this? Remember, the nums is an object of type of an array of integers. Therefore, because it's an object, if it gives us the memory address, that means that there's no toString method in an array, because what it's printing is the memory location that is telling you where the array is located in memory. But because there's no toString, Java doesn't know how to be able to represent the array. So the only way to be able to print the elements in the array is going to be using a for loop. So let's go and use a for loop. So for int I equals to 0, because the first element is of index 0, while I is less than, we have 5 is the last one, I plus plus. Inside, we're going to do a print statement, system.out.println. Actually, I just do print with ILN, so we actually print all the numbers in the same line. And we're going to print nums with the index of I. So as you go through the loop, it's going to print 0, the index of 0, which will be 23, the index of 1, 2, 3, 4. And notice that once it gets to 4, it's going to increment to 5. Let's say it's 5 less than 5. It's going to be false, so it's going to end. So therefore, it's not going to get a chance to print the very last element. So, and let's go and place a space in between so we actually can see each of the numbers. So because we only got up to 5, but we actually didn't get to 5. When it says 5 is less than 5 is false, so it doesn't get to print the last element. So therefore, what we're going to do, instead of saying index of 5, we're actually going to say there are 6 elements in there. So when we run it, we're actually going to get a chance to print the last element, which is 88. If we go and add another element, let's say 3, it'll be index of 6. That means that we have 7 elements. Now we can change this to 7 to be able to print all of the elements. If we have one more, 9, then the index is 7, but that means that we have 8 elements in the array, so we can print all of them by saying, well, I is less than 8, and therefore it will print them all. But there's going to be many times that you get an array and you need to be able to print all the elements, but you have no idea how many elements are in the array. So what we do, instead of actually printing 8, we are going to use nums.length, because that will be the number of elements in the array. That will be nums.length with no parentheses, because it's going to be in variable, something to memorize. With strings, you do need the parentheses. With arrays, you do not need the parentheses because it's going to be a variable, a final variable. And therefore, it's going to print. So if I go and add another integer and increase an array to 9, 1, and let's actually do 5. Now there are 10 elements, and I can print all 10 elements without changing anything. So we can use this format to be able to print all of the elements within an array, so we can iterate through each of those indices to be able to print them. Any questions? Now, we can also create a for loop to be able to insert or assign values to an array. So let's go ahead and create, let's go ahead and get rid of these indexes. And let's go ahead and create an array now that's going to have 10 elements, and we're going to assign those 10 elements through a for loop. Then we're going to initialize the array using the other method, calling the constructor. We call it, and we do need to be able to tell Java how many numbers we want to be storing. Let's say 10 numbers. Now, right now, if I go ahead and print, what is it going to print? Correct. It's going to print 10 zeros because the initial values will be zeros if you don't give any values to it. But now let's go and do a for loop, and let's go and assign random numbers between 0 and 20 or 100. Let's go to between 0 and 100 and assign them to each of the indexes. So it'll be a for loop, int I equal to 0, while I is less than nums.length without the braces, I plus plus. And we're going to do 100 numbers. So let's go and say nums at the indicated index, whatever we are iterating through, equal to math.random. Remember, math is a static, random is a static method in the math class that takes no parameters. And we are going to multiply by how many numbers we want. It'll be 100 minus 1 is 99, and add one more is 100. So we want 100 numbers, but we want to start with 1, so therefore we're going to increase it by 1. And therefore, that's going to generate 10 numbers, because we're going to go through it 10 times. It's going to create 10 random numbers between 1 and 100. So now if we want to be able to create 20 random numbers, we can just change to 20. So therefore, we're going to go through and generate an array with 20 elements that are random numbers. If we want to be able to change 50, we can quickly create 50 numbers. We can print the first one, which is 9. What's it? The second one, which is 9. We can tell it to print the length and then print all 100, all 50 numbers. Now let's go make 100. So therefore, quickly, 100 numbers. Any questions? Now, what if we want to be able to determine if we can find the number? My lucky number is 16. So let's say if we can actually use this array to be able to determine where we can actually find, instead of just printing all 100 numbers, actually let me make another for loop. I want to be able to determine if I can find a number. So to determine if we can actually find a number, we want to be able to create a flag variable that we're going to say, I prefer to place my flag variables as Boolean. And we want to be able to see if we can find the number 16. It's a Boolean, and I usually like to place the names of the Boolean as something meaningful. So we're going to say found, and we're going to initialize it to false. Now we're going to go through a for loop, and we're going to look for each number and see if we can find it. So we're going to say int I equal to 0, while I is less than nums.length, no parentheses, because it's a variable, I plus plus. And now we are going to say if nums. So what would I need? I. If it's equal to 16, the number that I want, then we're going to say found is equal to true. That means that was found. And if that's the only thing that we need to do, we can actually just break out of the loop. And we can system.out println. And we can just say found. Let's see. If we randomly do 100 numbers from 0 to 100, there has to be a 16 in there, right? False. And let me just do a print statement, empty print statement here. Let me run it again and see if we get lucky this time around. Sure. Sure. Yeah, so the probability is pretty high, correct? Now, what if we were using a method for this? If this was within a method, then instead of doing break, we will be doing return, and it will be returning true if that was the case. Last thing, what if I want to be able to find out how many times did the 16 occurs? Then we can create a counter instead of a, and we need to be able to declare it and initialize it to 0 because we haven't found anything. And we can just say count plus plus every time we count. And in this case, we want to be able to go through, even though we do find the first one, we want to be able to go through the entire array. So therefore, we don't want to exit. And there's an error. Found. There's not found any longer. It's called counter. Let's say found so many times. So if we count one time, let's see if we can do more than one. One time. 0 times. One time. Oh, I wanted more than one. So let's go and do 1,000. Let's see if we can find more than one. Let's see if our algorithm actually works. Yeah, we found it 6 times. So that is the power of arrays. We can store a multitude, 1,000 numbers in an array, where before we had to actually initialize and declare 1,000 different variables. So this will conclude the lesson for today. Have a great day, and I'll see you next time.